we talk about you would pay more for an integrated development where you've got zoning, maybe a wide site or a mixed site where you can have maybe a shopping center downstairs, and then maybe integrated, you have MRT station, that kind of thing. So there's that value there as perceived by the consumers. Therefore, the land would be determined as more valuable. lah. And then the developers would also have more courage to be able to want to go in and make a bid for it.
Welcome back to the Find Your Place podcast. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and I'm with my co-host, Justin.
Hey guys, good to see you again.
Yeah, and today we have another important big wig in the studio, right? Yeah. You consider yourself a big wig, right?
No,
No, I'm a market
Modest. Nowadays it's servant leadership.
Yes.
we are serving. We're serving the market. We're serving the industry. We're servants. Okay.
Okay. But for our audience that don't know you, would you like to introduce
And
yourself?
my name is Darius. I'm the CEO of 99.co, which is a property portal. We also run SRX, which is a data analytics platform.
Oh, okay, great. So I actually look at SRX quite a bit, right? So,
Oh,
yeah.
You want to find out how much your property can sell for, right?
Would you consider that the smarter investors, they will look at SRX more? Whereas 99.co is a lot more information about all over the place. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think SRX definitely have more data and more analytics
Exactly,
too.
yeah.
It also has its famous X value for finding out what your property is worth. So for more data-oriented analytical buyers, sellers, investors, then yes, the SRX is more popular. 99.co will be more mass market lah.
Yeah.
User experience is more convenient.
Yeah.
A lot of people like it better from a search and discover property standpoint.
Yeah, fair, good. And I mean, I would consider you a dominant player in the game today, right? So
Thank you.
it is what it is.
Thank
yeah?
you.
Yeah,
Very
and
kind of
we
you.
and that's why you're on the show, right? Everybody that comes on the show have a certain standard. So we today want to talk a little bit more about this whole matured property thing, right? This whole like SERS versus En-bloc mature property, right? And I think there's a lot of people that are exploring this space for multiple reasons. It could be that they've inherited the parents' property, right? It could be that I think based on the data sets, you can tell that the cost is very cheap for some of these matured property. So you might just take the 50-year and run the course, right? So there's a lot more discussion in this space. So we wanted to take to this episode to talk about versus En-bloc, all this mature property, what's going to happen to them. Okay.
Interesting topic.
Yeah. So
You sure this is the right age group or not? We're quite young,
No, I think we're the right age group, right?
I'm not.
Our parents' age group is
Okay, it's much younger
they
than
will
me.
pass to us lah. Then eventually we'll settle this thing, right? So to lay the ground, right? Maybe just kind of help us understand like what is going on here, right? This SERS verse, like what is the difference, because I think sometimes the media cover in a very sensational way, right? I always say it's very sensational.
sensationalized.
Yes. So like, what is it actually? And then En-bloc is probably more on the private property side. Then we can kind of compare that on that view. So would you like to take us through?
Sure. So I think all these abbreviations, right? That's what Singapore is famous for.
Yeah.
So I mean, SERS and VERS are actually for the public market, right? One is voluntarily done, which means they give you, the residents, the choice to choose whether you want to go through the process. Basically, it's two different things, but actually yet the same thing. So let's talk about SERS first. SERS usually is mandated more by the government. They'll come in, they'll acquire the property because maybe they want to build an MRT station or whatnot. So they have to take over your property. And of course, in view of that, they will try to give you a discounted replacement nearby or in the vicinity. Whereas VERS, the word voluntary comes in, which is once your property hits a certain age, the government may come in to give you a choice to say whether you want to stay back and let your lease run its course, or of course, you have the choice again to then maybe sort of like move into another area where they'll give you some discounted pricing, giving you some residual value while your property still has maybe about 30 years left on the lease. So that's the public market side of things with SERS and VERS. Then with collective sale En-bloc, of course, that's what everybody loves to talk about. I think
Is it the talk of the town? Or is it like
No-
more and more people talking about
No longer, to be honest, but I think we can delve deeper into that later. I think in 2018, we had that huge run-up, almost $10 billion, if I'm not wrong, of capital released into the market because of collective sales. But different time today. But anyway, collective sales is just very simply older properties, whether they're freehold or leasehold, the residents get together, they form a sales committee, and they decide to maybe want to try to look for like a developer to try to buy over the place and redevelop, intensify it. Yeah, so that's pretty much these three different areas lah to talk about. Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of a public discourse around verse for a while, right? There's a little bit of that discussion around like how are prices determined? You know, like do you have some thoughts around there to I know sometimes these things are black box, right? Like we don't exactly know how the price is determined, but based on the data sets, you probably have a general sense of like how are the prices determined, you know, how much do you need to put in and all that. Would you like to kind of lay some insights there?
I think maybe first of all, for the audience, a quick clarification, right? Verse hasn't happened yet and not going to happen until 2039. So a long time away. A lot of things can happen between now and then in terms of what the scheme is and how is it being used. But I think both SIRS and VERS obviously came out because we are, for the first time in the Singapore history, getting to the point where HDB blocks are almost running towards its 99 lease end. So we got to have a solution to what actually is going to happen to it. And if
An exit plan of sorts.
an exit plan of sorts, right? So definitely there's a big discussion around how the price is set. And I think we have pretty good guesses on how the government think about these things. It will be some sort of market price discounted by lease decay. Government has a famous Ballas curve. You can look it up. It's pretty complicated, but essentially, long and short of it, what it means is that the shorter the lease is left, the less value it is. So there's a discount rate to it. And then you discount the market price based on the lease value. And then in the end, you get a certain price. Now, this is how we understand typically how we would think about price and value. Exactly how SIRS and VERS is going to set this price, that's really a black box at the moment. Yeah.
Fair. Very, very PC.
No, but this is particularly because, I say this, yes, PC, but it's also because what is market price is very hard to say. We just saw, I think 2 weeks ago, last week, Dawson has a new record again, 1.7 million for HDB.
Yeah.
Is that market? Is it not market? Who knows? How do we know what is market price? Is
no
that
one cares about Bishan anymore, right? Now it's Dawson is the talk of the town, right?
it's everywhere is going up. Everywhere is going up.
Okay, fair. So I think for our listeners, right, when they think about it, then the question is there an opportunity here, right? Is there an opportunity in the public space to park yourself in some of these older flats and then get that turnaround in the SIRS or in the VERS? You know what I mean? And then
Yes.
potentially get a capital, release in the market.
Justin, what do you think? I run platforms,
Do
so
you
I got
think
no
like,
opinion.
do you think like
Better
public
ask the
market,
industry expert.
Forget it. Yeah, don't think of punting it.
We
in-
just
in
put
the
listing,
public
let you find
space.
only, okay?
Yeah.
Better ask the expert here.
do you see a lot of listings coming up towards the lease decay when the lease gets shorter and shorter? Do you see that more people are trying to get out? That's a
I don't
question
have the
as well, right?
data
Yeah.
point with me, but
Yeah.
definitely.
You
So
do see that,
especially
right?
when
Yeah.
it's approaching the 60 years
Yeah.
lease left, the conventional wisdom is that because there's another factor at play, which is that the ability to get a mortgage decreases once you get past that age.
So your exit
the
plan is
property age as
affected,
well.
right? Yeah. Your next buyer will have the issue.
Yes. So there's a lot more people that, basically if it's a 99 years leasehold, when you hit 30, 40 years, then suddenly there's a surge of people looking to exit. But at the same time, there are also a surge of people looking to buy. Because especially now, compared if you look at a property that's maybe 30 or 40 years old, they tend to be bigger, they're lower price on the PSF basis, and thus for the same dollar, you get a lot more space. For many, many reasons, people like to buy. Some people like to buy it potentially as a lottery ticket for En-bloc if it's private. Nowadays, discussion of SIRS and VERS in the future as a lottery ticket. Now, I don't know if that's advisable public, particularly in the HDB side. So I think there's many good reasons to buy an older estate as well. But definitely there's a surge of people looking to sell when it heads towards the 35, 40 years mark.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that is backed by your data sets.
Yes, I don't have the data offhand with me, but we're pretty certain of it.
Okay, fair.
We do see that as well, I mean, from a consumer level, right? Because, I mean, truth be told, you're holding on to something that is approaching its lease decay into its later stages. You will start to worry as well. Because today, firstly, depends on what stage of life you're at, right? Say if you are already 50 and then you think you can live another 40 years, you've got 30 years left on a lease, that also becomes an issue. You don't want to be living in a place until you're 90 and then say, I'm still alive, but my lease is not alive, right? So then you got to move at 90. I don't think that's very workable, right? So, and then, okay,
It'd be quite cute if someone moves at 90.
you know what? If I can move at 90, guys,
that's great. That's
yeah,
great.
I'll call for a house outing and a house warming after that, man. I think that's worth celebrating, right? Yeah, but I mean, so there's the reality and the practical issues, right? Like outliving your lease, right? That's one thing. Then, of course, like what Darius was saying as well, people tend to worry about the exit plan because if you need this real estate as your stepping stone to your next real estate, you had better clear out earlier when you still got a more you've got a higher resaleability rather than waiting towards the end, right? Where it might be so difficult to sell out. So I think it's so subjective. Your question was asking more, do you think that perhaps there's some people are thinking of this as an opportunity, right? To jump in. The government has already also made it very clear, right? Don't depend on this. Even, okay, you talk about SERS versus being public market. Again, that's mandated by the government. We don't really have control about it. Maybe you can look at certain areas and like postulate, oh, there's going to be a lot of urban redevelopment here. Maybe they're going to be clearing out this area. Say like maybe Marine Parade, they're going to be doing the whole Long Island project. So they're going to intensify the area. Maybe I should just buy one of those old point blocks with, 60 years left or 50 years left on the lease and try my luck. But the word is trying your luck, lah. You never know how it's going to play out, right? But that's a public market. Then private market. Private market, if you're going after a leasehold property, again, I think you got to look at the fundamentals of the intrinsic value of the land, right? Say, for instance, you buy a piece of property that's directly above an MRT station. Whether it's 30 years left on the lease, 70 years left on the lease, developers or whatever the market is still going to continue to demand it. And because of the private market, you have the ability to do collective sales. Your land with that intrinsic value being above an MRT interchange or MRT station will hold that value much longer. And somebody will come along at year 40 or year 30 or whatever, and it's still worth something because it's price land, it's prime land, right? So that game is a little bit, I would say, easier to manage. There would be, because you're talking about just private market fundamentals, right? Economics, right? If the land is worth something, there'll always be demand on it. And in fact, you let the lease decay even more, the residents might have more push factor to want to get out. Then it might be even easier to talk to them then. So it might make sense. Rather than you go something that's 20 years old, people say, I still got 80 years, 70 years left. I'm in no rush. So if you want me to sell you this land, this is my price, right? Versus going to something with quite a deep lease decay where there's more push factors for the residents to want to actually exit. Then the developers might have an easier conversation. I mean, one of the things now why the market isn't really so hot for collective sales, because a lot of the sellers we know, they're still sitting up there on the cloud saying, I know my land is worth a lot of money. Land prices in Singapore is only one direction. So I'll just wait. And better still, we talk about 99 years if it's freehold. Wow. It's better than the Patek Philippe, right? It's just keep passing it on with no inheritance tax and all that. I think that's something people will continue to hold on to. Plus, one more fact, actually, I wanted to add on. I think this one people also should know. Now we have very little foreigners coming into the market because of ABSD, right? But don't forget, that's about people coming in to buy. But there are also a lot of foreigners who already hold properties in Singapore. There's Indonesians who hold properties in Scots Road and stuff like that.
That was a long time ago.
And they got in really early. They probably came in a few 100,000. Today, the place is worth millions. But it's not about the money being made. Technically, they sell it now, they stand to gain a lot of cash. But the problem is, if my name comes out of that property, my replacement cost to go back in at 60% stamp duty, ABSD, doesn't make sense. I'd rather just not touch it and just continue to earn the rental on it, even if the rental is not very strong. But hey, it's freehold. If I cash out now, I got to pay ABSD. So no. I'd rather just leave it. So you have that kind of resistance. So if you're trying to go in as a developer today to talk to someone like that and say, hey, I'm going to offer you X amount of price, like, even if I take my money out, I want to go back in, I'm going to have to pay the government a lot of money. So there's quite a bit of resistance on that as well. So if you're intending to buy into a property with that en-bloc potential today, these are some of the considerations you really need to really look at, right?
Yeah. Because I was renting at Golden Mile.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
I had the exact
Nice.
experience of what you're saying.
Yup.
Right, downstairs, yeah, the merchant, then you talk to them. It's like, yeah, 我要 on block 很久了. Right, I've been trying to
可是
do this.
楼上的人不一样。
Yeah. 楼上的人 life very good because it's very nice, right? The
Yeah.
view, the residents upstairs don't want.
Yeah.
All the commercial guys downstairs, they all want to let it go,
Yeah.
right? So
And I
there's
assume
this
some of the
thing.
residents lived there for decades.
Yeah,
Right? So they're
yeah.
like they just
Yeah.
love that place so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. And there's some mechanics here, right? You must have like 90% of people agree to this.
80% if it's if it's more than 10 years, you can 80%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if they try to do this en bloc thing once and it does not work, then there's a
then you have
cycle,
a waiting
right?
process and all that as well. Yes,
yeah,
correct.
yeah. How long?
So
what's
not
the-
so straightforward,
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
honest. In fact, on that note as well, today developers are also not that hungry because we notice like even our GLS sites now, right? The bids have not been as aggressive anymore. So from a demand perspective, it's not what it used to be. So you wouldn't want to go through the whole process. And it's like you said, it's a very painful
painful.
process. Yeah. Not just for the residents, right? But even for the developers. Today I go GLS, I just throw in my envelope and then may the best man win. It's very clean.
Yeah.
You go through collective sale, I'm sure you guys, I mean, we've seen so many cases also, right, where the thing was prolonged, it's dragged on. Even you got your consensus, you got a developer pay you the price that you want. You have a group of residents who still want to contest it. Then, wow, the process could be so long drawn. And then finally, when you get out of it, you're 3 years into the game. And what you thought you sold at a good price back then 3 years ago, today, fast forward 3 years later, you're like, oh, I did my assessment back then, right? When if I could cash out this money, I could buy this. But 3 years later, this money that I promised to let the place go at is now no longer, as what it used to be.
There's an opportunity cost.
So all this waiting and all that, you're right about the time period. Yeah, it's quite a long drawn process.
So that's the end of today's episode.
But just it would be right to say that is even en bloc also follows the property cycle, right?
Yeah.
So I think property cycle comes every somewhere around 7 to 10 years. There's always a cycle where the demand outstrips supply. So developer is rushing to buy land, to build, to cater to the demand. And then especially over the last few years since COVID, we have also slowed down population import, amongst other things. Birth rate has dropped. So I think for all those reasons, I think the market is adjusting to the lowered demand. And then once the absorption rate of the existing units is taken up, then I think the en bloc cycle will come back again. But these things always go in cycle, whether it is the property price or kind of demand for new developments.
Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, Reggie, would you consider buying something like Golden Mile if you had a chance to buy in again? Something with such a shorter lease,
No.
right? No? Okay, that was a straight answer.
No, because I mean, my point of view is the place is not very nice.
Okay.
Right? Like, okay, the location is not bad,
Yeah.
right? The view is
not bad.
The view is not bad, but the building is just crumbling. Like I can feel
Yeah.
the mold, when I go in.
Yeah.
Right? Then the bamboo shoot downstairs, the smell is very strong, right? Like we all know what Golden Mile was for, right? So it's a great place to drink, have good Thai food, but it's I don't like it. But I understand what you were saying, the contestation, because there will always be people that come in with, this is a historical value.
Yeah,
There's a nostalgia here. Then I talked to some of the landlords, and they was like, 不要跟我讲 nostalgia, right? I don't want to talk about nostalgia. I just want to let this go. It's been dragging for too long, right? So there's that thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But I think it's a big part because of the overall market being relatively quite priced in, right? Very high. So people are starting to look at some of these spaces, right? Like the more like, is there a turn here, right? Like is there like a collective sale somewhere that I could potentially go on, and then I go in at an older building at a lower price, and then I kind of go from there, right?
Yeah.
So people are exploring these things. That's why we want to kind of discuss it, right? And one of the things you were talking about is this like intrinsic value of the land, right? Could you kind of help me understand, like, how do I evaluate the intrinsic value of this piece of land? Is it relative to the next parcel? Right, yeah.
I think land prices all differ. I mean, the thing about land is not homogeneous, right? It's heterogeneous. So, like you see, one site could be, we've seen properties, I'm sure Darius has seen this on data as well, right? Because this is District 9, and then this happens to be another district. Even though it's just across the road, there's a price differential already. There's this condo I always remember at East Coast. It sits between the line of District 15 and 16, but they're both called Eastern Lagoon. One is 1 and one is 2. right? But they both sit on different sides of the road and they're both in different districts. And because of that, there's actually a price differential, even though they look almost exactly the same and they are both just across each other. But because of the district differentiation, right, the land value is different.
Ah.
Yeah, but also because of that, in Singapore, we have development charge, DC, and all those kind of things. And DC applies to different zonings as well. So there is actually an intrinsic value to the land. That's why the government actually charges higher development charges for certain zonings, even though they're lineated on almost the same space. Yeah, so I mean, that aside, I mean, that's the fundamental value, right? But to us consumers, I mean, you would, like we talk about, you would pay more for an integrated development where you've got zoning, maybe a wide site or a mixed site where you can have maybe a shopping center downstairs, and then maybe integrated, you have MRT station, that kind of thing. So there's that value there as perceived by the consumers. Therefore, the land would be determined as more valuable. And then the developers would also have more courage to be able to want to go in and make a bid for it, right? So it ultimately goes back to the end customer and the demand for the land. And such things don't change, right? I mean, we're buying a land because it faces the sea or something. And then we've seen
We can
also
reclaim
incidents in
the
Singapore. Yeah. Or a new developer just decides to put something right in front of you. Yeah. I mean, we all know cases like that in Singapore, right? So then again, the land value changes because of all these things. So some is quite dynamic, but some, the more intrinsic one, doesn't change. If the MRT station is there, I don't think they would move an MRT station, a subterranean
of course,
MRT
it's
station
crazy,
away.
it's
So
crazy.
the value stays with the land, right? So that gives you a bit more confidence. Whether it's a 99-year leasehold or freehold, the value of that will always be there intrinsically because it's locked into the land.
Fair. I mean, that is I understand what you're saying, but there's no like database to track land price, land value, or how, like, you know, like how do I evaluate? So I already own this property here in Bedok, right? Then how do I know like this piece of land? What's the intrinsic value? You know what I mean? Like, is there some
The
platform that I
easiest
can
way
use?
to look at the data is to look at, of course, government announces any GLS and many en-bloc things are being announced in terms of transaction price. There's no easy tool. If you want, you can consult an agent who has one of our tools called Analyzer, gives you a very good way. It's too complicated for a consumer to use because it takes like at least 10 hours of training. So we don't actually release it for consumers. But if you find an agent who uses this tool, they are able to do a very in-depth analysis
Solid
for you.
agent, right? Yeah.
But I think more importantly, to get to the heart of your question though, I think the heart of the question is, how do I buy to gain investment value, right? That's really what the question is.
Yeah, that's
right?
the base, right? And,
So you can evaluate what today's intrinsic value, and like Justin said, some factors are predictable, some factors are not so predictable. But which is why I think more important part is to first answer the question of what is the holding power? How long you want to hold? I think it's a very important question to ask. You want to hold for 5 years, then don't worry about the intrinsic value of the land. Doesn't matter. Most likely you're going to resell your unit. If you want to hold it for 40, 50 years until it gets en bloc or SIRS or VERS or whatever way it is, the whole piece of land get sold, then I think the question is more importantly to think about, is it going to get much more developed in the whole area? So it's not particular to that parcel or that building. So if you look around Singapore, and then there are plenty of government information that you can use, whether it is the URA master plan or whether it is the LTA transport plan telling you where the MRT stations are coming up, right? I think those information are probably more useful to predict where in Singapore the value would increase faster than the rest. That said, just one caveat. In general, Singapore is pretty well planned and pretty even and pretty transparent. The delta is not that much anyway.
There's no,
it's not arbitrary.
You may get like 1% more a year here versus there, but it's not that much difference.
makes great coffee conversation, right? You do 1% more than your friend, right?
Okay. Fair. I get it. I hear
But
you.
I think to sort of, to add on to what Darius is saying also, I think there are qualitative and quantitative
of
elements
course,
to it, right? So if we look at the quantitative elements, were all those intrinsic value of looking at probably nearby GLS sites. If not quantitatively, how we usually approach en bloc is we work it backwards. What's the potential selling price of this site? We work it backwards, how much we can acquire this land for, building costs, add-on, and then potentially whether the developer has the courage to take on that selling price at the end of it, right? So it's possible to quantify it. But as an investor, it's not just about that also, right? Because say if you're buying to stay, right? Because you think, oh, I'm going to get this golden ticket out to my retirement, right? Like what you mentioned earlier on about Golden Mile. Firstly, when a property has en bloc potential today, you will have a number of residents who say, I'm waiting for my golden ticket out. So don't ask me to upgrade the lifts. The swimming pool pipe is broken. I don't care if you have to swim in green sewage, so be it. I'm not going to spend a single cent. So if you happen to buy there, to live there, waiting for your golden ticket, you're going to have to go through some of these qualitative issues.
Really?
No one wants to spend on maintenance. Your lifts break down. They say, oh, we need a new lift system. That's going to cost $500,000 per lift call. The guys who want to get out say, why should I be contributing to this? I'm waiting for my golden ticket out. So if you bought in to live in that building, now there's a chance you might be having to use the staircase sometimes. So there are these qualitative issues because you're talking about holding period.
Yeah.
So you have to get real as well, right?
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's not just about the money, the quantitative part, but if you're buying to stay, you might have to write out some of these. And the holding power is not just about money now.
Yeah.
It's about you also whether you can tong through this
Yeah.
period, right?
Yeah.
Brought to
use
you
the
by
stairs.
Healthier SG.
Oh
huh?
yeah. Then you'll be thankful, right? You can go
Yeah.
get your NTUC vouchers.
Yeah.
For climbing
Stats
stairs every
challenge,
day.
right,
That's
right.
right.
Okay.
And especially if you want to go even deeper to this, right? Older projects like Golden Mile,
Yeah.
many old condos.
Yeah.
Sometimes the owner will have bought it decades ago.
Yes.
And their life has changed. Maybe they lived there for 10 years, they move on, they kept it as an investment unit, collect
Yeah.
rental. Then in that case, they don't really actually care about maintenance,
Oh yeah.
right?
Or
So
who
you have to
lives-
look at the composition of the management committee, right? The composition, the votes based on owners who are landlords or owners who actually live there.
That's right.
The quality of living is actually different because they will choose by that whether to invest in upkeeping the place or not.
Absolutely.
That is
Imagine you bought in $500,000. The house potentially today could be 4-5 million. $500,000 today, even if you rent out the place to some workers and you max out the rooms inside, you dice it up.
Yeah, it sounds like Floral Drive.
A couple of examples, very easy. Because
A lot.
I mean, the older ones have large floor plates. It makes a lot of sense to dice it up, right? Yeah. Your living room could be 3 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms are the use. Amazing, man. You add on to the other 3 bedrooms, right? So like spot on what Darius is saying, man. If you don't mind walking out and next to you is a house filled with like 6 to 8 different workers inside. Workers also of different professions, right? You might be white collar and all that, but your neighbor might be in a completely different kind of profession. The landlord doesn't care. I mean, they're getting good yield, or maybe they don't even care about a place because they bought $500,000. They might just leave it to be a storeroom. And again, if you ask them to spend $500,000 to upgrade a lift core, I bought it for $500,000 and don't really care, man.
Wow.
You know, but you're living right next door, you're putting on your nice suit to go to work every morning. Then you realize, oh, done.
Yeah.
The lift's not working again.
Yeah.
And then you take that nice flight of stairs down in your Armani suit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hey, Coconuts, if you love the podcast, you need to check out the full episode on Orange Tea's channel. They're doing a lot of other interesting content like expert answers and Jalan Makan and more to come. So link in the description box below. Check out Orange Tea's channel.